Hey there, welcome to another episode of 8 Weeks Out TV. I'm Joel Jamieson, your host, along with Howie Howard Clark.
It's like that today, isn't it?
It is like that today. How are you been?
I'm good, man. You?
Good. What's new?
A lot of the same stuff, you know. Cruising around the internet, trying to learn some stuff, or
You and everybody else in the world.
learn some stuff, or see what they say and run it by you and see if it's worthy or not.
What do you got for me today?
Oof. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I'm big on the aerobicators.
The aerobicators, they're everywhere.
And then I take some of the information that I read and then I run it by you, and get it disproved. So.
You got anything?
Example? Oof. I don't know. I read one about 60 reps of sprinting 8 seconds and resting 12 seconds for fat loss, and it was not claiming to be aerobic, but I think it would be aerobic after a few sprints. But I don't know. I think
that'd be aerobic after about 3 of them.
But I don't know. I don't know the difference. That's why I ask you, and then you come up with the information.
That's right. Well, you can ask. Today we got a great guest. We got Mark McLaughlin from Performance Training Institute in Oregon. Been a big friend of Mark's and discussed all sorts of training stuff over the years with Mark. And we're going to first start off with a great segment that Mark's put together for us on how to use the bike to build endurance and improve your recovery. So let's take it away.
Howie, Joel, thanks a lot for that introduction. My name is Mark McLaughlin with Performance Training Center, here with one of my trainers that works with me, Jake Jensen. And today we're going to talk about the high resistant bike rides and why and how to use them in your training and how they can be used for training purpose or recovery. And before we get started with how to perform the bike rides, we're going to talk about how to set the bike up before the athlete gets training and why it's important. First off, we need to make sure that we take the inseam measurement of the athlete against the wall in his bare feet. Next, you take a thick book, put it up into the athlete where they will be sitting on the bike against the wall, and then use a pen to mark where the top of that book is. From there, have the athlete step back from the wall and with a tape measure from the spot down to the floor. Then once you have that measurement, and for example, we'll use 30 inches. You would take 30 inches times 0.883, and then that number is the height measured from the top of the seat down to the middle of the bottom bracket. Okay, Jake, hop on there and we'll show everyone how to do this. And so with this exercise, the goal is to have enough tension on there to where you're only achieving 20 to 30 revolutions per minute. Okay, Jake, go ahead and start. So it's a push, pause, push, pause, push, pause, push, pause. Okay, and so with this exercise, since there's no tension at the top because there's a relaxation phase, the hyperplasia of the muscle is being developed, which is allowing the muscle to recover from any hard work given the day before, and then to also improve the aerobic capacity at the muscular level. And so this is great for the day after extremely hard bouts of exercise, for games, after games, and it really gives the athlete a sense of well-being. And the other part of the exercise is the duration of it. So Jake would do this exercise anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes of work, and then he would have a 2 to 10 minute rest period after. The goal of work throughout this exercise is 60 to 80 minutes of total volume. And this can be done anywhere from 1 to 2 times a week. Make sure to pause there, good. And the other thing too is you don't want to exceed the anaerobic threshold of the athlete, okay? And so again, to kind of recap some key points to this exercise, number 1, make sure that we get the right saddle height at the beginning. The second thing is we want tension high enough to where the athlete is only getting 20 to 30 revolutions per minute. Total work time, 5 to 20 minutes, followed by 2 to 10 minutes of rest. And again, I'd like to thank Jake for being a great asset to the demonstration here, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.
And welcome back. In the studio today, we have with us Howie as always, and of course Mark McLaughlin is back with us from Performance Training Center down in Portland, Oregon. Thanks again for coming, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Appreciate it.
No problem. And today we are talking about just different methods of endurance training. And Mark is one of those guys that's worked a lot with soccer players, with lacrosse and football. Maybe give us a background on what athletes you worked with mostly.
Yeah, so the typical athlete we see is American football. Probably 80–85% of the clients that we have, basketball, baseball, little lacrosse, and trying to get in now into more of the endurance training. So,
no, more football than I realized. But
yeah,
you were really one of the first kind of guys, along with myself, to use HRV and to use the Omega Wave to train people. I mean, can you talk a little bit about, you know, what have you seen from an HRV standpoint, from a training standpoint? What's the biggest things you've learned over the years with the use of technology?
Well, probably the biggest thing that I've seen, Joel, is the fact that everybody's going to respond to training much differently. So, you know, whereas, you know, you could go out for, you know, do squats for 45 minutes, you know, same with Howie, same with me, and then we go back and test on the Omega Wave, each of us is going to have a different response and a different recovery, you know, time from that training. And so really learning how to treat the training on an individualized basis, and also understanding that the stress outside of training will affect how our athletes recover. So it's just not the training stress that we have to think about. It's, you know, are they doing their homework? Are they getting to bed on time? You know, are they doing the things outside of the training that allow them to recover to go into harder training?
Yeah, I mean, Howie, baseball player, I mean, obviously you guys travel all over the country and had to play, and, you know, all the stress that goes along with that. I mean, what do you think as far as the, you know, the utility of HRV and monitoring all those stresses outside of just training?
I mean, I always look at everything from a baseball perspective, like you said, and whether it be travel, mental stress, sleep, food, the diet, everything is a factor. Game times, different game times. Baseball's a little bit different because you can play a game and not really do anything.
Right.
And there are other games where you can kind of be all over the place, and so we're recovery, and that's where I think HRV is great in terms of knowing when you may have to take a day and do some recovery work, or if you're ready to train. And what I was going to ask you was, how young do you know, you deal with a lot of younger athletes.
Right.
Do you put them on it? Do you check out their HRV right away, or is there a cutoff? Or
Well, anybody and everybody that comes into our facility gets tested. So whether they're 10, 11, 12, because the thing really what happens with high school and college athletes is the sudden cardiac death that happens.
Right.
And so what my stance was from when I opened the company was that we wanted to take care of the health and well-being of our athlete. And the only way to do that was through the Omega Wave and the HRV. So I want to know, number one, are they heart healthy to train? Whether they're 10 or 80, it doesn't matter. And then from there, you know, if they do need, and they do maybe have an underlying cardiac issue, we can see it, tell the parents, hey, you need to take your son or daughter to see your pediatrician and go for some more testing. And that has happened more than once. Yeah.
you see some results, it's startling.
Yeah, and that's the big paradigm shift with the training side is, teaching parents that more work isn't necessarily better, and with this feedback system that we have, whether it's the Omega Way, the BioForce, it's telling us that your son or daughter is just not ready to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing, unfortunately, especially in the last few years, you're seeing more and more programs going towards volume, frequency, and we're losing the individuality. I mean, coaching has become just how hard can you run your athletes into the ground, and what coaches like you and myself have seen is that is not a good approach. I mean, the individuality has to be focused on if you want to really take each athlete and deliver them the results that they need and they want to get to the top.
Yeah, absolutely, and looking at the training from a long-term perspective, and understanding that it's going to take 10 years, 10,000 hours to reach elite status, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication. But if you're always hurt because you're trying to rush things too much, then that athlete will never reach their full potential.
Yeah.
Well, the hard part is it makes a lot of work for you, right? Having to individualize each program. You can't just put together a workout and say this is what everybody's doing. If half the people aren't ready to train that way, then it's...
Well, yeah, I mean, fortunately, because I've been doing this now for 10 years, I have a good kind of the art side of training. There's the science side, which you need, and then there's the art of it. And so, over trial and error, and believe me, I've made my share of mistakes. You kind of figure out, what works and what doesn't. And then also how the individual athlete is going to respond to those changes, and you can only do that through practically applying it.
Right. And paying attention to the person as an individual rather than, these classes with just 50 people or 100 people, to me it's crazy. There's no way you're ever going to really help that person get where they need to go by throwing them in a group of 100 people and doing the same thing to all of them.
Oh yeah, and I think that's why there's some things in America where it's just over volumized, and there's certain sports that we're just not good at, and they're really the ones that the rest of the world cares about, and the ones that we're good at they could care less about. Yeah. And that's why with these types of modalities that we're talking about, like the Omega Wave, we can hopefully help the athlete reach their potential.
And let's talk about the high resistance stuff we did today with the bike. Where do you see that fitting into? You talked about recovery and the aerobic fitness side. Actually, let's talk about football. Where would you use that typically with a football athlete, since that's who you said you work a lot with these days? Where would you fit that into their program?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you listen to coaches talk about football, and based on the science, it's alactic aerobic, okay? So there's no lactic accumulation throughout the game. We can all agree on that, right? Absolutely. But when you look at the practices and the way that these coaches put these kids through during a week, while the game may not be lactic environment, the practices certainly are. Yep. All you have to do is go watch it. And so one of the things that I've done with those high resistance bike rides is, and for instance, we'll take a high school example where they play on Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are typically the hardest days. So then I put that bike ride on a Thursday or late after a Wednesday practice to help recover the mitochondria that has been damaged during those 3 days, so accumulation. And then when they get to Friday, they feel almost euphoric.
Yeah, they're ready to go.
Yeah. And so it's partly the recovery of the mitochondria, then just that sense of well-being. And then there's a psychological component too of, oh man, this guy really cares about me. I feel great. This must really work. And so you get a psychological benefit out of it as well.
Yeah, I've had Howie do those a little bit here and there, and I know you liked them as well.
Yeah, I did them on the bike, and then we also did them with that rope, the endless rope, which is very tough for the upper body, but you definitely feel rejuvenated.
Yeah.
And like you said, especially after, say, like a heavy leg day, a squat, and maybe some depth jumps, you can do that the next day, and it's something to build on for the next time.
Yeah.
You definitely notice your recovery the more you improve that aerobic side.
Right, absolutely. And then there's also the biological power side of it, where you have, games that require 60 to 90 minutes. And yes, strength is important, but you also need the engine.
You gotta maintain your strength, right?
To maintain that strength over 60 and 90 minutes. And so this is another good tool to help build, that capacity to, carry out your speed or your strength for an entire game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, real quick before we get going,
Yeah.
for someone that doesn't have a spin bike, we talked about a couple of alternatives. I mean, can you tell the audience what else it is? What other ways can they get the same effect if they don't have a spin bike? I know they're not pleasant.
Right.
They might have to make Howie do them.
Oh, we're definitely going to, I think, have Howie do them for hours on end. And but the first one is the walking lunges. And again, it's the same parameters, 5 to 20 minutes of work. But you need to make sure that after you lunge and come up that you relax and then lunge out again. And then something that you and I talked about some years ago was the step-ups. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit more about how you use that and how you've used it in the past.
Yeah, I mean, but generally it's the same principle, like you're saying. Instead of doing a lunge uphill or the bike, you can just have generally about a 24-inch box, depending on the person's height. But you just have them do step-ups one at a time, taking a break in between, and same principles, 5 to 20 minutes of work. And it's honestly, it's brutal. It's brutal. So for the most part, we throw them on the bike.
Right.
If we can,
Right.
unless it's Howie, then we throw them on the step-ups. But for the most part, we try and stick to the bike as the preferred method of doing it.
Right. I know mental toughness, is always the buzzword in the industry.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I think there's some things that you and I know that could really test people's mental toughness that they have no idea about. So
Yeah, absolutely. But it's, overall, I've used the method for years, and I know you have, and it's one that most people don't do. When people think of really high intensity intervals, or they think of distance work, and they don't realize there's ways to get the benefits of the high intensity work without necessarily as much trauma and as much stress on the joint and everything else. And that's where something like this, really comes in.
absolutely.
Most of the time, I was going to say people don't think about aerobic being painful. When you do
Right.
it like high intensity wise like that, it's
Right.
it's challenging, but definitely it's a nice change from doing the other types of cardio that are important, or aerobic work, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up this week's show. Special thanks to Mark McLaughlin. Again, where can people find out? I know you have some stuff on Elite FTS, but where else can they find you? What's your website,
Yeah,
Mark?
so the website is www.results1.com. And then within that website, I also have my blog that I've been writing now for the past 2 months.
Facebook, Twitter, you got any social media stuff online?
Facebook.
Connected.
Oh yeah, I'm super connected, Howie.
Connected
You don't
to
even
the
know how
information
connected
highway.
I
Yeah,
am.
that's right.
And I sell the BlackBerry, so.
Do they
Anyway.
make those anymore?
They do. They do.
All right. Well, people have to send you a message in your BlackBerry, I guess.
That's right.
So you can make sure and stay tuned to next week. We're going to have a great show on nutrition and athletic performance, and we have some special guests for that. In the meantime, make sure and enter your name and email to get instant email updates about the latest news and stuff going on here at 8 Weeks Out. And you can find us again at Twitter, just Twitter/Joel Jamieson, Facebook/8 Weeks Out, and of course here at 8weeksout.com we'll have more, and we'll see you again next week.